Next, let's talk about forms. Forms are, of course, extremely helpful and very valuable for capturing contact information or generating leads from our site visitors. And let's talk about a couple ways that we could create forms. Now, we're really just going to focus on one here for now. And in our web developer course, you'll see an additional method, but we're going to keep things somewhat simpler here for now. So let's talk about what a form is, first of all. We already talked about this a little bit in our content types video. If I expand my navigation here on the left, take a look at my content model tool group and look at our content types. Like I said before, we already talked about forms a bit. If I click the plus sign, we'll see form is a content type. If I click the drop down here in the search and I scroll down, you'll see form is an option. I could click on form and we'll see, hey, we already have one form content type. This is our contact form. It's a general contact form like it says in our description. And if I click on it here, we can see all of the fields within that content type, just like other content types, right? So we see our form title, success callback, form email. If we scroll down, we'll see our first, last, headshot, phone, etc. We could, of course, add other fields in there if we'd like to and drag and drop them in. And this is how we can build a form quickly and easily. Now, this is the low or no code way of building a form, just like a content type. Now, I do want to point out that we could find these elsewhere. For instance, here in my marketing tool group, you'll see I have a forms option there, and I can see that contact form listed. So this is essentially just like searching through our content types with only the form filter selected. Once I click on it there, you'll see it takes me right back to that same page, again, looking like I'm just modifying a content type. Now, of course, we could click on the little pencil icon next to any of these fields, like say first name, and we could edit it. We could modify this form. Now, I don't want to modify this form because it already exists within our site, but we could create a new form. So let's go back to our forms here and click the blue plus sign to create an entirely new form. We'll call this a quote request. We could provide an icon for this form if we wanted to, and this is, again, really just for how it displays within the back-end navigation here. We could search for something if we want, like quote. That looks pretty good. We could give a description. Not sure if that's entirely necessary there, but it can be helpful. What site or folder we want to store that form in, the workflow that we'd like to use by default, and an action that we'd like to use by default if we wish. We could save, publish, delete, etc. We also have the option to select a published or expired date field if we wanted to, but like it says, we must create an indexed date time field before setting this property. So for now, let's click create. Once we're here, we have a couple of very simple things, our form email, success callback, and form host. If I click on the pencil icon for any of these, you'll see we'll need to provide an email address that we'd like to receive that form in here. So I could go ahead and use something like our info@.cms.com. I could save that, and now our form email should receive that. Now we can go ahead and start adding in some rows. So I could click add row. I could choose what type of row I want to add. If I want 2 columns, 3 columns, or just 1. We'll keep this nice and simple. I'll choose 1 for now. And then we can add in our fields. So let's add something like a simple text field to start. We can go ahead and provide a name like first name. We could choose the data type for this. We want this to be text. We don't need a default value, but we could provide a hint if we felt it was necessary. And we could, of course, use a validation regex, just like we talked about before with our text fields. We will require this, and we will index it as well, so we could search this. This does not need to be unique necessarily, since it is only a first name field. Then we'll click save, and now we have a nice first name field here. We also could go ahead and add in some other fields, like our, of course, last name with text. We could also include something like, say, a date field, where people could say the date of trip, and we could provide a default value if we wish. Again, we could provide a hint there if necessary. We could require this, but maybe people don't have a specific date set, so we could leave that as unchecked. We'll click save. And we could, of course, provide something like, say, a multi-select or a radio for the region or destination that they might be interested in, etc. We can add the fields that we find necessary to complete our form to make sure we capture all the information that would be helpful to help generate these leads. So you see how this is a quick and easy way of building a form. I'm going to add a couple of fields in here, and then we'll just take a look at how that displays once we're done. All right, so now I've completed editing my form here. Let's go ahead and add it to one of our pages so we can see exactly how that might look. I'm going to go to my site browser, go to my training folder here, and let's just go ahead and add it to our South Africa page here. This probably isn't where we'd usually put it. No. And let's add a new page here within our training folder. We'll add a page. We'll just leave this as a basic page that we'd like to create within the training folder. We'll call this our quote request, and we will publish. Now we will edit this, and we will add our form into this container. So here we have our forms on the right-hand side. I can click on this arrow to view the forms we have. I could drag our quote request in here. And once it's been added, we can see all of the fields that we added in. So we can see our first name there, our last name, the date of trip, number of travelers, type of trip, and any special requests. So now that we've added this, we could go ahead and choose to publish it. So we'll do that. And now we can see it in the preview, exactly how our form would look to any of our site visitors, and they could populate these values to input a request for a quote.